Good morning, dear friends. And spring has arrived. Happy Passover and happy Easter to all of you. Welcome to the online Easter Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Laura Lesch, and while I am certainly happy to be here with all of you and serving as your worship associate this morning with our service leader, the Reverend Dave Tarbell, and our beloved musicians, Peter Winkler and Deede Cook, I am certainly not at all happy we cannot be together as usual for these holidays and their traditions. However, we are all where we must be right now, hoping that our physical separation will help speed us to the end of this pandemic. Meanwhile, how awesome is it, or some might even say, how fearsome is it, that we are still possible with today's technology to meet and worship together so we can be together in spirit. Of course, technology is only as good as the wizards behind the curtain who are willing and able to make it all work. On behalf of the entire congregation, I offer our deepest and most heartfelt thanks. First of all, to our worship associates and our Director of Religious Education, Deb Little, who are working so hard to create meaningful services and we can keep us going. To our communications team, who help us all connect and stay connected, liberally dispersing psychological assistance along the way, especially to me. To our music director, Dan Weymouth, who, in addition to all his usual responsibilities, has been the director of our online services and our screen sharer. And last but not least, to Linda Cortese, our computer guru, and the tech support team. She surely wins the prize for the number of hours put into this effort. Without all these folks and others sharing their formidable gifts and countless hours of their time, none of this would be happening. Much of this work is new to us, and we're learning as we go. So we are very grateful for your patience with our mistakes. I want to offer a special welcome to anyone who may have found us online and are joining us for the first time. We are a welcoming congregation, and you are welcome here regardless of your age or abilities, your skin color or nationality, your first language or your sexual preference. Surely, we need each other more than ever as we stay the course for the common good. By now, we all have our stories of the impact that this new reality called social distancing is having. So we thank you for being here and invite you to stay on after the service for a virtual coffee hour where we can all see each other and chat together. And when all this is over, please do visit us in our fellowship building on Nichols Road in Stony Brook for a regular service. The announcements for this week can be found in our weekly newsfeed, which is sent out every Thursday, and can also be found on our website. There you will also find information and links about Unitarian Universalism, our 7 principles which unite us, and our 6 sources which guide us as a community of faith. Allow your mind to quiet now and your heart to open as we listen to the sound of the morning bell. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, please light it, as Dave lights ours here. And I share these words from Alice Anachenka Nasserman. In a time of uncertainty, when everything around us is changing constantly, each day new developments, rising numbers, changing guidelines, when the world we live in is suddenly topsy-turvy and upside down, we light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that our flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope in World War II, a secret symbol that offered hope. In the midst of it all, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together in community.
For opening words today, I have chosen a poem by William Butler Yeats, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming? Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all around it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. What rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? Our opening hymn is number 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. now go to our meditation, first in words, then in silence, then in song. People sometimes say that Unitarian Universalist religion can't be a real religion because we don't believe in anything. My response is to say that religion shouldn't be defined by belief in, but by whether it gives us a way to deal with real life on a gut level. Does it help us respond to times like these when we need support just to get through the day? Does it help us cope when we cannot meet on a Sunday morning in our usual way? I know our UU religion helps me to cope with both the present circumstances and all the other trials of this life. Today is the Christian Easter. Wherever we may have gone in our UU religion, many of our religious roots are in that Christian tradition. And that Christian tradition has roots, deep roots in earlier religious beliefs and practices. This week, I need to touch on some important aspects of those roots. The symbol of the death and resurrection of the Son of God is tied to dimensions of human anxiety and hope that reach deep parts of who we are. Parts of that resonate in a special way with our present circumstances. Many of us are connected to someone who has succumbed to this pandemic now upon us. We are all touched by the fear of disease and death. This is the time when we look to our faith for a deeper level of support. If morality, social justice, and a friendly coffee hour are all there is to UU religion, that would be rather thin. In times like this, we need something more. The real question is, can we in liberal religion find things we can resonate with on a gut level? Do we have something to say that deals with how it feels to be alive in this world, both its positives and its negatives, the good times and the bad? Frequently, the question is put in another form. Is there a spiritual dimension to our liberal religion? I think that there is, and that is part of how we will get through this difficult time. We touch on that spiritual dimension in many ways. The poets and the artists among us help us find that dimension. Sometimes it breaks through in music, sometimes in a simple sunrise. It breaks through in many of the ways that we help to support each other, if we are open to it. Let us now take a moment of silent reflection, and we will be inspired by one of the photographs by Sylvia Kirk. We will come out of the silence with spirit of life.
Each week, we are invited into the spiritual practice of generosity, by taking a collection which is shared with a local organization that is working for social justice. During this time of crisis, we seek to remain in connection and community with those we have fought to support and protect from unjust immigration enforcement. And so this month, the recipient of our Share the Plate collection is Long Island Jobs with Justice. They are using the money in their Solidarity Fund to help local food pantries that are directly servicing immigrant communities, and they are providing emergency financial assistance of $100 to $200 for undocumented workers and families who are ineligible for other relief programs. Many of us are also facing financial uncertainty now, but if you can, please consider, as you listen to this beautiful offertory music we're about to hear, making a donation to their Solidarity Fund for emergency financial support during COVID. And remember also to try and keep up with your pledge payments as well. You can mail a check to our office or click on the donate button you will find on the homepage of our UUFSB website, all while sheltering in place.
Jerry Stone wrote a book a few years ago that tries to deal with the spiritual dimension of our liberal religion. It is titled The Minimalist Vision of Transcendence. Stone is addressing what he sees as one of the problems of our modern age. As we have moved away from our Christian roots, we have tended to lose any sense of transcendence. As he puts it, the loss of the experience of transcendence in our secular life has resulted in two quite different moods, the self-assured and the alienated. Both of these moods agree that there are no absolutes to ground our knowing or our sense of values. The alienated finds no source of meaning at all. The self-assured finds no source from which relative meanings could be questioned. Stone goes on to say that both of these forms of secularization are tied into forms of dehumanization. Alienation dehumanizes through its general lack of a sense of meaning or value. The self-assured type tends to reduce knowledge to the mathematically measurable and replaces any deeper sense of values with the purely economic ones. We know what the gross national product is, but we have forgotten just how gross it is. As the images of the falcon and the sphinx in Yeats' poetry might suggest, Stone is pointing to ways that the modern secular society has separated the rational and the bodily felt dimensions of reality, putting all significance on the former and relegating feelings to the unreal, merely subjective. Our Christian roots dealt with this by pointing to a different dimension of reality, a separate realm of the spiritual, which stood apart from our everyday world. Jesus could be crucified in the physical world and rise again in another dimension. Our modern sense of the world no longer allows for a separate dimension. But there is very good reason to say that this one world we live in has more to it than is accounted for by a simple factual account. There are times when we find ourselves hurting and need help. There are times when we find some inner strength we didn't know was there. There are times when this life seems to ask more of us than we can bear. There are times when we know we ought to act and can't find the strength. And there are times when the world seems to give us strength that we cannot explain. In all of these situations, we find ourselves dealing with aspects of this world that are not explained by our ordinary sense of how things work. We find ourselves in an encounter that involves aspects of the everyday world that aren't so everyday. They are somehow deeper, stronger, more meaningful than the everyday. These are what Jerry Stone refers to as encounters with the transcendent. Stone's notion of transcendence is relative to our ordinary understanding, and by that he means mainly the dominant cognitive mode of our modern age, which is scientific understanding. Ever since the age of the Enlightenment, the mathematical sciences have come to be the dominant mode of giving accounts of what the world is like. By transcendent, what Stone is pointing to are those aspects of our ordinary everyday experience that are not well accounted for by this form of explanation. There are times when something happens that has the feeling of the miraculous. A few years ago, a friend of mine was diagnosed with a serious form of cancer, and the doctor gave him a life expectancy measured in months. It is now years later, and while he has a number of health issues, he is leading a full life, only occasionally impacted by medical problems. That is the kind of thing that makes you feel that there is something that has somehow we've been especially blessed. Such recoveries are not unknown, but they are rare. When such blessings come our way, we feel that there is some power at work other than just the ordinary. Then there are those times when you are dealing with tragedy and someone steps up and says just the right word. They can't make the pain go away, but they can let you know that you are not alone. That can be one of the greatest blessings of all. One of the things we all need to be reminded of is the immense power we have to help each other by just being there for another person. We can make some magic without being a magician. When we realize that we can be and perhaps have been of help, that is one of the times we feel that we have experienced something beyond the ordinary. On the quieter side, there are those moments in the everyday world when the emotional sense of sustenance somehow breaks through in a special way, beyond what can be explained by our ordinary causal explanation. Last summer, Laura and I spent a few weeks in Western Massachusetts near Tanglewood. One late summer evening, we sat on the great lawn at Tanglewood and listened to Yo-Yo Ma play all 6 of Bach's suites for solo cello. Bach's music is one of those things that can give one the feeling of the miraculous, the kind of experience that goes way beyond explanation in mundane terms. Physics and physiology can explain how we hear the music, but they cannot explain how we are moved by that experience. For most of us, there are times and places where that sort of feeling comes through in a special way, where some aspect of the natural world speaks to us in a way that goes beyond anything that can be covered by ordinary explanation. We become aware of what I would call the religious dimension. One of the things that Stone stresses in his book is our need to be open to that religious dimension. This is tied to the idea that we live more deeply than we can think. Our everyday experience always has more to it than we can capture in any science or ordinary explanation. We can never describe even one moment of our real experience in such a way that there is nothing left out. And a significant part of what would usually be left out is the kind of quality of experience that cannot be easily described in flat factual terms. It is the stuff that the artists and poets sometimes capture. Most of us cannot be poets, but we can try to keep our awareness open to some of the poetic quality, the religious quality that is always there in felt experience. There is a spiritual component to our everyday experience. Being open to that dimension of experience starts from allowing for the possibility. If you buy into the notion that everything can be explained in terms of measurement and quantity, then you have cut yourself off from that kind of experience. If, on the other hand, you accept, at least as a possibility, the idea that experience is always richer than we can describe, you are opening the door to a deeper sense of life. If you can listen to the poetry of Yeats or Eliot or Mary Oliver or whoever is your favorite poet, and resonate to the feelings that are generated without trying to explain what they mean, if you can stop your hurried rush through the world and take some time for moments of quiet meditation, or simply being present to your body and emotions, then you may find a deeper aspect of all your experience. The Christian story of death and resurrection is one way of pointing to these experiences. The music of Bach is another. The recognition of our power to support one another is still another. For me, a key to our liberal religion lies in being open to and recognizing the religious dimension that lies underneath the everyday. Our closing hymn is number 1058 from the Teal Hymnal, with words by Theodore Parker, who captured a vision of our liberal religion 200 years ago. May you glimpse that deeper dimension in some aspect of your day, whether it be in a piece of music, a bird on the wing, or another human presence giving you strength you did not expect. And may you recognize your power to do the same for another, even if via Zoom.
For many years, we have ended our Easter service with our choir singing Handel's Hallelujah Chorus, and many of you coming forward to join in. We can't do exactly the same this year, but our talented tech team is going to try to help us to recreate that experience. I hope you will all join in lifting your voices and singing along with this very special piece of music.
Hallelujah. Go in peace.